Unshelling Medicine Podcast. Healthcare in the language we understand.
Hello, welcome to another episode. Today I have the pleasure having Douglas Mulhall with me. Douglas is a co-founder of Elastin Therapeutics and also the author of Discovering the Nature of Longevity. And this will appeal to everybody, all our listeners, because we are aging and we're aging fast. Whether we like it or not, right? So also the elastin therapy actually applies to me, something that I haven't shared so far on my journey will be shared today. So let's listen in. So we will learn something. I am excited to learn as well. So welcome, Douglas.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I'm grateful for your presence. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your career as we go into the topic that we talked about before jumping right onto this podcast recording.
Sure. My background actually for the past few decades has been environmental health. That is creating products that are healthy for people and their environment, which is a hot topic these days, as you know, because the new administration in the United States is focusing very much on environmental health. And that is the relationship between your environment around you and your health. And what our institute has done is we pioneered the first methodology that really focuses on creating products that are healthy for people and defining what those are. So that has been the thrust of my work. I've written a few books about it, and we can go into the other stuff as we go along. But I've also co-founded a medical biotech company, as you mentioned at the top, called Elastin Therapeutics, which is focusing on restoring the elastic fiber in the body.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the elastin fiber in the body. What is that? And, for people not in healthcare, when you're talking about elasticity or any elastic, it almost feels unnatural in the human body. Because what are we thinking about when we're talking about elastic waistbands, right? So please, can you break that down to everyday listeners?
Yeah, sure. A lot of people are told that the way to keep their skin looking beautiful and elastic is to maintain and restore the collagen in their skin. Not true. The collagen actually in your skin does the opposite. It keeps your skin firm and strong, but it doesn't keep it flexible or elastic. So, for example, with your beautiful smile, for example, every time you smile, and you notice how when we smile, the whole face kind of moves, that is the elastic fiber in your skin. But it is far from only being in your skin. It's in your arteries. It allows them to expand and contract to move blood around the body. It's in 35 of the organs in the human body. So basically, you can only see, laugh, run, jump, have sex, and give birth due to this tremendous elasticity of this stuff called elastin fiber. And for those who are just listening to this and not watching, what I am doing here is I'm just stretching this elastic band out. Elastin fiber is a fiber that expands to about 8 times its standing length and snaps back again billions of times in your lifetime. And if everyone wants a nice graphic demonstration of this, and this would be really good with you and me because you're so much younger than I am, this is called the pinch test.
Right.
So what you do is, and I want you to do this right now, okay? Hold up your hand, the back of your hand, and pinch the skin on the back of your hand between your thumb and your forefinger. Hold it up for about 2 or 3 seconds and let it go. Okay. Did you notice, for those of you who are listening, how your skin popped right back and my skin went down more slowly? That's because elastin fiber degrades in all of us, starting in our late 20s and continuing as we age. That degradation is a major trigger for the aging process. So I call this elastic fiber the elastic of life, because we really wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be able to, well, as I say, it drives every breath you take and every move you make, to quote a famous song. So yes, this is a wondrous stuff. It actually makes up a relatively small percentage of the tissue in your organs and your skin and your arteries. But that small percentage is what allows the skin and the arteries and the organs to expand and contract so many times over our lives. And that's why, as we age, we start becoming less flexible.
Yes.
That's a major reason behind it.
I love it. So let's go to collagen. When it comes to elasticity and the industry, that is a huge industry in both cosmetics and also
Right.
with supplements, right?
Right.
So what is the long-term effect of use of collagen, say, either face or body solutions, or ingesting collagens with hopes to have the elasticity supplemented? And when scientifically it doesn't help the elasticity, instead it helps with the toughness of the skin in a sense. So what is the long-term effect of that?
Well, good point. So the long-term impact of that is that it is beneficial if you have scientific proof that the collagen is maintained and even repaired, but that is only keeping your skin strong and firm. So the reason that we sag is largely not because of collagen or the loss or damage to collagen, but rather the loss of elasticity in the skin. That's the major reason why we get wrinkles. Now, just to be clear so people understand, elastin fiber is woven in between collagen fiber in the body. It's one of the great miracles of the human body. So that woven cable or strand is both firm, strong, and elastic and flexible.
Right.
It's really a miraculous combination. So not to underplay the importance of collagen, because collagen is extremely important, but the reason that a lot of these supplements and cosmetics companies have been focusing on collagen instead of elastin, although that is changing, but the reason that they traditionally have done that is because until very recently, no one knew how to fix damaged elastin fiber. Elastin is one of the most complex substances in the human body. It involves thousands and thousands of biochemical reactions. The formation of elastin fiber happens mostly outside of cells, in the space outside of cells, which is known as the extracellular matrix.
Right.
And so it is here outside the cell where the real action is happening, also with collagen. So the combination of collagen and elastin is really the key to the whole thing. But until these recent discoveries were put into practice, they didn't know how to fix it. So what did they do? They focused on the collagen, of which there is much more, and there are, many more solutions.
Absolutely. So I like how you educated that the sagging in the skin is because of elastin loss over time. So let's talk about the remedy that is very popular, and most people, men and women, partake of this practice of Botox injection in order to have that filled look, either from loss of elastin or just the crow's feet when you smile in your eyes, or even the smile lines, or, when you furrow your brow, the forehead lines. Are there drawbacks to having, I know some dermatological drawbacks, however, are there drawbacks to injection of a Botox, which is a toxin, to the natural formation of elastin, especially in the area of injection?
Well, I'm not a Botox expert, but I'll say this. I mean, anyone who is pushed up against a Botox injection will usually and often feel that it's stiffer than the rest of the surrounding skin. I mean, that's what it does. It expands and stiffens the skin, which is why when people with excessive Botox smile, they have this kind of funny, smile. So you asked about long-term effects.
Right.
I think this actually comes back to an underlying factor that Botox can contribute to, but is the real problem here. And I just want to talk about this underlying factor here for a moment, because the subtitle of my book, Discovering the Nature of Longevity, is Restoring the Heart and Body by Targeting Hidden Stress. And it is really this hidden stress that is triggering this aging in our body. And what it basically does is it turns our immune system against us. Why is this happening? This is happening because our immune system has a built-in defect. And that built-in defect is that it's really designed to get us out of trouble in the short run from injuries, short-term infections, et cetera, et cetera. And it does that by promoting inflammation, which everybody has heard of. But when these hidden stresses, they persist over time, which they do in all of us, the immune system basically goes into secret overdrive and starts giving you chronic inflammatory responses, chronic inflammation. Now, after a while, this chronic inflammation doesn't work very well, and the body senses that. So it attempts to wall off wherever this chronic infection or injury or whatever is happening in your body. And that leads to hardening of your arteries and your heart and your organs, because it releases a substance known as calcification or calcium phosphate. And this is, a lot of people who've seen these CT scans, for example, you can see this calcification in the arteries. And it's also fibrosis. So you get these fibers, these really nasty fibers starting. And the combination of the fibers and the calcification leads to hardening of your body, which brings us back to the Botox, because basically the Botox is, like I said, when you press against it, it gets hard. Well, as we age, doesn't matter who you are, we all turn to stone because our immune systems have turned against us. It's just this fundamental defect that humans in particular have, but also animals have it. Dogs have it, for example. A lot of other animals have it. On the other hand, some animals have actually learned to live with it and have learned to live very long. Some species, like whales, for example, some species of whale live to be 250, 300 years old because their immune systems are different and they're responding differently. So I know that's a very long answer to your question, but I wanted to get that on the table because it is the key thing. Starting in your late 20s, your immune system invisibly starts to turn against you because of these hidden stresses that are constantly attacking your body. And that is leading to chronic inflammation and stiffening of your skin, your arteries. And that's why very long-lived people usually die because they creak to a halt. They become so calcified and stiff that nothing works anymore. Now, just think about that for a moment. Think what happens. Your arteries are the key to the rest of your body. They transport the oxygen and the nutrients and everything that's necessary for your body, also to fight disease, also to fight cancer cells, for example. So your arterial system is becoming compromised starting in your late 20s because of this chronic immune response that starts to harden all of our arteries imperceptibly. So we don't really start to notice it until we're in our mid-30s, at which point, it's a little harder to get up in the morning. You're not just quite on top of your game like you used to be in your 20s. That's the aging process. that is triggered by this chronic inflammatory response that is triggered by the destruction of elastin fiber by these hidden stresses. So that is called the injury inflammation cascade. It's a cascading series of failures that proceeds invisibly and is a major trigger for aging.
Absolutely. That's such great information and education. And I think the aging process is something that, we all experience. But when it comes to stress management, humans are very horrible at that. And sometimes you normalize a lot of stressors, right? Because it's normal part of life. And one devastating hormone or chemical in the body, I should call it, that really offsets that stress is cortisol. So what damage, in addition to the natural aging trigger, does cortisol add to that insult? Like a high level of cortisol in the body, yes.
Well, I'm going to answer that question more generally because it's not just cortisol. When you get this, and by the way, just let's start at what is hidden stress.
Yes.
Because when people think about stress, they think about, psychological stress, which is particularly high these days.
Yes.
And, they think of physical repetitive stress, all of which is true.
Right.
But what I talk about in the book, The Discovering the Nature of Longevity, is two particular forms of hidden stress that are really not on most people's radar. And the first one is toxic metals that are found everywhere in our environment. And just because I say toxic doesn't mean that we humans have created them, although we use them extensively. Toxic heavy metals have been with us ever since humans started to walk the earth. They're found in the earth's crust. They're found in the soil. Plants take them up when they're growing. So as soon as we invented agriculture, we started taking in more of these heavy metals. So this is not something that was the invention of industrial society, even though industrial society has greatly magnified the amount of heavy metals. But Egyptian mummies show evidence of having these high levels of heavy metals in them. The second one is low-level infection that you don't notice. Everything from Helicobacter pylori that infects almost everybody, but in a lot of people elicits an immune response that they're not even aware of, and in some people causes stomach ulcers. And, there's other ones like chlamydia, for example. So there's a whole range of these very low-grade infections that usually escape the notice of normal blood tests because the tests have a certain sensitivity. And it's the same with the heavy metals. The blood tests done for heavy metals don't show the metals that are in your tissue, in your skin, in your arteries. The majority of the heavy metals aren't in the blood, they're in the tissue. And unfortunately, blood and urine tests are the standard tests that are used. So if you just take those standard tests, everything's sort of within limits, except maybe a few people who have been heavily exposed to these metals. So when I say hidden stress, I am bringing attention to these two very powerful stressors and aging triggers that deserve a lot more attention by our healthcare authorities. And by the way, that's exactly what's happening right now inside the health agencies in the US. The leaders of those agencies are starting to say, okay, let's start looking at the real triggers for some of these diseases. And they have brought attention to these heavy metals, for example.
So what is the fix? Because when we're talking about those hidden stressors, what has really shocked me in the last few years is the detection of microplastic, even on the DNA level, right?
Yep.
So, what is the fix? How do we go about, because we can't avoid all of them. Like you said, we have to eat. We eat to live, not live to eat, people. So we have to eat. We have to garden. Farmers are gardening, even hobby gardeners garden. We have contact with the soil. Our kids are playing and rolling in the grass. They're hugging trees, the healthy ones. So it's okay to hug trees kids. So what is the fix here? How do we help, in a sense, purge ourselves or have like a metal cleanse? Because it's not in the blood, it's in the tissue. So what are the steps a person can take to mitigate, not completely eliminate, but mitigate the harm that these hidden stressors can have over time?
I like the term that you used, mitigate, because there is no fix per se. As you said, we'll never get rid of all of this exposure. And the key thing about these stresses is they accumulate. So they accumulate over time. For example, these heavy metals, they'll build up in your system. So there's two different levels that we can pursue here and that are being pursued. One that thousands of other books have described, and which I just refer to because there's a lot better expertise out there than mine. And that is the normal, a healthy nutrition diet, preferably a whole food diet that focuses on whole foods and preferably has a slant towards plant-based foods. Also organic foods, of course, because a lot of these heavy metals are found in the pesticides and fertilizers that are used to grow a lot of these plants. So yes, nutrition, organic foods, exercise, all of these things are really important in terms of slowing down this process. Also, there are certain foods that will help your body to combat these low-level infections, but more importantly, to help your body produce the enzymes that can get rid of these heavy metals. So a lot of the spices, for example, can help with this. And one of the best ones is broccoli sprouts, of all things. Not the big broccoli, but the little sprouts that you can grow in your kitchen. Yeah. And they have shown to be very effective at helping the body generate these enzymes that then go and grab or chelate these heavy metals and remove them from your tissue, and then you basically pee them out. Okay? So all of that is very valuable. But as we've seen over time, it doesn't get rid of all of this, and we're still all eventually, we have this buildup in us. Some of us are more resilient than others. It's just like some people smoke and drink until they're in their 90s. I mean, look at Winston Churchill, fine. So, but most of us, that doesn't work too well. Right. And forever and ever, we were stuck there. Mm-hmm. We were stuck. Then, about 15 years ago, scientists on two different sides of the planet discovered a few different ways to actually kickstart the restoration process for the elastic in our body. Right. And it's amazing because one of those discoveries was made at Clemson University in South Carolina. I work with the scientists there. I've worked with them for many years. I collaborate with them in our company, Elastin Therapeutics. But a scientist by the name of Dr. Naren Vivahari, who is the head of the bioengineering facility at Clemson University, discovered that a plant-based substance that is found in tree bark, the pomegranate fruit, the rind of the pomegranate fruit, and other types of plants can actually kickstart the reassembly process for elastin. Now, why do I say reassembly? The reason for that is because in your late 20s, your body stops assembling elastin fiber. That's when the trouble starts. This substance, which is known as pentagalloyl glucose, that's the last time I'm going to say it. It's PGG for short. And it has a remarkable ability to combine with the biochemical structure of elastin and its components to complete the elastin assembly process, because your body is producing the building blocks after your late 20s, but they never get assembled into this elastin fiber. And this substance actually helps them to do that. Now imagine the impacts on the human body if you could restore the elasticity in your skin, in the little connectors that connect all your muscles, in the 35 organs that have elastic fiber. Just imagine what the impacts would be. And indeed, today, there is one clinical trial going on for that substance to treat aneurysms. Now, anyone who knows a little bit about aneurysms will know that it affects millions and millions of people in the United States. It's life-threatening, and there's nothing basically that can be done about it with the exception of fairly risky surgery when it gets too big. And along that path, it can burst anytime, and people live in fear of that. You know, millions of people have these aneurysms. So when PGG was applied directly to the aneurysm stabilized and was prevented from bursting. And that's now that's been proven in humans, the clinical trial is going on. So this is really exciting stuff. That's for sure. Now, that's aneurysms. Now, when it comes to the whole arterial system in the body, well, that's a little bit of a different thing because, you know, the problem with PGG is if you just inject it into the body, it doesn't work because it gets diluted, it gets broken apart by all the substances that are in the blood. And so you've got to figure out a way to deliver it right to the site of the damaged elastin fiber. And Dr. Vivahari figured out how to do that with something that indeed is a little bit of rocket science. And that is, and I'll just explain this very briefly, but he took the drug, the PGG, this naturally derived drug, and he put it into these little nanoparticles that are like 150 nanometers in diameter. And then he connected the nanoparticles to an antibody. A lot of people have heard about antibodies for treating cancer, for example, and your body produces lots of antibodies to fight infection. And he connected it to an antibody that is designed to be specific for the damaged elastin. So this combination of the drug, the nanoparticle, and the elastin antibody allows the drug to be taken directly to the point of the damaged elastin fiber and gradually released. And in animal models, it has been shown in several animal models that this can restore the elastic fiber. And the same method has been used to decalcify or get rid of the hardening in arteries by using another chemical that actually chelates or takes out the calcification from the arteries. So it's kind of like a 1-2 punch. If you're older and you've got this hardening in your calcification, this can first get rid of the hardening and the calcification, and then the PGG actually restores the fiber. So all of that is tremendously exciting because it has huge potential. And the former head of the National Institutes of Health back in 2014 said, this really has the first potential to reverse the course of the disease. And so all of that is in the works today and is being worked on. And that's what our company, Elastin Therapeutics, is working on as well. And that's what I write about in my book, Discovering the Nature of Longevity.
I love it. And, you know, it's amazing how nature heals. That is why I'm a big proponent on not the over dependency on pharmaceutical has been something that has its benefits. However, you know, we've seen a lot of harm come out of it. So when we're thinking of natural occurring foods like pomegranate, not even the fruit, the rind, you know, having such an effect is such an exciting thing that the human body is amazing to work with nature to heal itself.
But you know what's really interesting though?
Go ahead.
Some of the most toxic substances are found in nature.
Yes.
I mean, all you need to do is look at, scorpion bites, insect bites, poisonous mushrooms.
Even mushrooms.
Exactly. So the reason I say that is because a lot of these natural substances can be toxic if they're delivered in the wrong concentrations. And we've paid very careful attention to that because if you overload the body with some of this stuff, you can also create a problem. So it's this fine balance between increasing the targeting and the concentrations, but not to the point where you're going to be toxic to the whole human body and to the system. And that's what we have been, and Dr. Vivahari has been busy perfecting, is that fine balance. So like I said, you can understand now why it has taken so long to be able to repair and restore elastin fiber, because there is actually quite a bit of rocket science to it. But the good news is it's going on. Some of it's in clinical trial right now, not from our company. It's another company called Nectaro Medical. And by the way, this isn't the only way to fix elastin. So I'm not saying that what Dr. Vivahari and our company is working on and Nectaro is working on is the grand solution. There are actually a number of solutions right now being targeted to elastin fiber. One very successfully is for acne, wounds, and skin care that was pioneered by Dr. Tony Weiss at University of Sydney in Australia. And when I said earlier, two scientists halfway around the world from each other, well, one was in South Carolina, the other was in Australia. And the one in Australia found a very different approach by covering the wound with a scaffold and treating it with something that is one of the ingredients of elastin fiber, and that's called tropoelastin. So it's what they call a precursor to the finished product. When you coat the scaffolding with this tropoelastin, the whole process starts and elastin fiber starts to form. So that's a completely different approach, but it is also in clinical trial, and it was sold to one of the world's largest pharmaceuticals companies. It was the largest buyout in Australia's history of startups, $250 million. So this is attracting the attention of big pharma, but it's really interesting. It's not attracting the companies that have a vested interest in things like heart disease therapies. It's the companies that don't have the vested interest in those therapies and are focusing on other things that are really starting to scale this stuff up. So you're actually seeing this competition inside the pharmaceuticals industry. You know, it's the Band-Aid guys that have been treating us forever versus the guys who are really focusing on some of these core triggers.
Some healthy competition. I don't mind it. So...
Yeah, for sure. The reason I say that is because I don't want to paint the industry with one big brush, you know?
Right. Because it's not, that's, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that. You know, when I said what I said in the beginning, it's not the industry, it's not healthcare, it's not all pharmaceuticals, it's not all medical practitioners. That is why I have this platform. This platform is really for us to discuss what is in practice, what works, what doesn't work so well, where we're going, what has been done, right? Because a lot of people in the general public I'm in healthcare, I did not know about this discovery with even fixing aneurysm. I was just talking with one of my colleagues the other day, and unfortunately, one of the professors died like a few semesters before I started. And I heard a lot about her, what killed her, an aneurysm she didn't know she had, right?
Exactly.
And that's a medical professional, right? So this is exciting, not only exciting for the lives, the thousands and millions of lives that it will save, but, you know, it's exciting.
And improve.
And improve.
It will improve our quality of life.
Absolutely.
And it's both preventative and therapeutic. So if you're younger, you can take this as a prophylactic for prevention. But if you're older, the evidence suggests that we can use this to reverse the process. And you know, what's really funny is the title of your show, Unshelling.
And it was very, very, I'll tell you, it was very, very thought out. And there's a lot of purpose behind the name, because I believe healthcare is sweet, it's delicious. When we focus on why we got into this business in the first place, we have to break that hard shell, you know, of bad tradition and knowledge and get to the good part and highlight people who are doing the great work.
Here's something to add to the title of your show, an added understanding. That's exactly what happens with calcification. Is the therapy for calcification unshells these nanoscopic little particles that are formed by your immune system to try and wall off the damage. They're actually little calcified shells. That's exactly what they are. And this therapy unshells that stuff and frees up your tissue to be more flexible. So your show hit the nail on the head with that one.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Oh my goodness. Chills. Thank you, Douglas. That felt good. There was a lot of thought that went into the name. And as an educator, I wanted to highlight the good that is modern medicine, and also recognizing that maybe certain things don't work. Maybe we should break that shell, pot, whatever you want to call it, and rebuild it. And we can. We're smart enough to do it. And give the people that can do it and have the abilities to showcase what they can do for the common good of humanity, opportunity to do it.
That's right. That's what I talk about in the book is the researchers, the doctors, and the patients who together are discovering this new nature of longevity.
Yes.
And everything we talked about in this episode, ranging from your defective immune system to what is elastin fiber, to what damages it, to why it's so important, to the new therapies that are being used, to who's investing in them. Mm-hmm. All of that is covered in discovering the nature of longevity. And the reason I wrote the book is because I didn't see that anyone else had put it all together like that, especially this link between these hidden stresses, the defect in your immune system that responds badly to it, and the elastin fiber and the damage to it. So people can read all about it in the book. By the way, it's been a #1 bestseller on Amazon.
I love it. And all of that will make it available in the show notes as usual, the book link, the book itself, and everywhere you can find Douglas. So we'll make all of that, including his company, so you can look into the beautiful work they're doing and, learn more. I mean, knowledge is power. So Douglas, you mentioned a little bit in damage, right? Let's talk about the damage when it comes to elastin. Right? You and I talked a little bit before we jumped on the call. So for my viewers, I know for the past few months, you've seen my face increasingly get fuller. Full disclosure, I did have surgery on my foot.
Not your face, but your foot.
Because I was sedentary. I wasn't walking.
And it affected your face.
I gained a lot of weight. I did. And, in managing
it's a big problem. I mean, if you can't, walk around is a problem.
Yes. Yeah. So I had a surgery on my foot. And before we got on this call, I went to one of my follow-up appointments. And my doctor was not happy with scar tissues forming. And this is the second time this has happened. The first time I had scar tissue all through my incision. And my incision was a big one. It wasn't planned that way. But the surgery was more involved than originally thought, because by the time she got into my foot, it was something bigger than what she anticipated. So the first time I got the shot, it wasn't pleasant at all. So this second time, I almost disagreed with her, but she showed me the results, so I agreed to it. So when I talked to Douglas before we got on here that I'm a little bit in pain, and explained the scar tissue, and he educated me. I knew to a degree, but not in the way that he explained it. So Douglas, why is it that elastin overreacts with damage? So we have keloid formation and we have scar tissue formation over the damage that occurs with skin.
It's not that the elastin overreacts, and this goes back to the discovery in Australia of how to fix it, because that's exactly what the Australian technology is designed to solve. The problem with scar tissue is there because the elastin fiber in the skin or the tissue is irreparably damaged. So it's irreparably damaged. The fibers are sliced out. They're not even there anymore. And so that's why you get this hardening. And imagine a slower version of that is occurring in your arteries. So when you see hardened scar tissue, that's what's happening at a slower rate in your organs and in your arteries. That's because the elastin fiber is either getting totally destroyed or it's forming incompletely and building up these inflexible layers instead of helping the collagen be more flexible. So your wound from your surgery, that scar tissue is because of the destruction of elastin fiber. And what Professor Weiss's team in Sydney was able to do was when the wound is first created by the surgery, they put this scaffolding in and then treat it with the tropoelastin. And that way it can actually prevent the scar tissue from forming. And it's in clinical trial also right now for acne scars, for repairing acne scars, because basically that's the same process. So it both can be used to prevent the scar tissue from forming after surgery, and it can, to a degree, reverse scarring due to skin conditions such as acne. So, yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe you should check out the clinical trials on this wound healing stuff because that's exactly how they're addressing this scarring.
So why are some people more prone to it? Because the same thing with keloids. So people with melanated skin tend to be prone to scar tissue formation and get keloidal, with any trauma to the tissue. Is there a relationship there?
Yeah, of course there is. And, some people have better formed elastin fibers than others. Other people, and it also depends heavily on your age, huh? Because like I said, in your late 20s, your body stops assembling the stuff. So that's why you're less prone to scarring, to heavy scarring when you're younger, because the body can actually replace that scar tissue with new elastin fiber. Most elastin fiber is formed before your teens, and then it starts to slow down. So that's why you see these also differences due to age in terms of scarring. But it's like everything else. We all have our own independent genetic makeup. And, scarring is far more than elastin, as you mentioned. Right. It's a lot of these other factors that are involved. And it's an extremely complex process. Scarring is also an immune response, the immune system trying to deal with this massive injury.
Trauma.
So yes, it depends. Guess what? Hey, we're all individuals. Duh. So
Really?
yes, but, and there's a big but here.
Yeah.
Elastin fiber is common to all of us. And so that's why this is such an exciting breakthrough.
Is there anything that is prophylactically done right now or in research or in clinical trial to, at least for the aging population, we know surgery happens, people fall, fractures, or, things need to be surgically repaired for any reason. Is there any clinical research on prophylactically mitigating either the formation or overformation of scar tissue at a surgical site?
Well, actually, I would say the Professor Weiss's group are exactly leading in that area. Of course, there are dozens and dozens of other clinical trials, using other substances, using microsurgery, trying to prevent scarring from occurring in the first place, using microsurgery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not trying to say that this is the only solution, but until now, no one had been able to restore this elastic fiber. And because the damage to elastin fiber is one of the major reasons for this scarring, that's why this is such an important breakthrough. So that's the answer. It's not the only answer, but it's a big, big part of the solution.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you. And when it comes to interest, because again, you could have picked any interest in the world, Douglas. You could have been a sports analyst or a stock trader or anything. It's more lucrative and exciting. What really drew you to making an impact in humanity when it comes to healthcare?
A combination of curiosity and self-preservation.
So sweet. I love it.
Yeah, the curiosity part was also more of a sort of, how can I say it, an enraged curiosity because, my father died of heart disease. And when I started looking into it and what really killed him, yeah, okay, he smoked and he drank like so many people in his generation did. But I was never really satisfied with this plaque explanation, because what's causing the plaque to be formed in the first place? Cholesterol. Well, then why is it that half of people who have heart attacks don't have a cholesterol problem? So, I was never really satisfied with that. And because I was a candidate, because basically heart disease doesn't run in our family, it kind of gallops, and so I knew that I was a candidate. And so quite early on, I started studying what could be the possible causes of this. And I have to say, at the beginning, for the first, 7 or 8 years when I focused on this, I was very focused on the calcification part, which is really important because calcification is also highly inflammatory. So it's a really nasty thing. This thing where these microcalcifications are physically sharp and chemically toxic. So calcification of that sort, the microcalcifications, is just bad stuff. So I was focusing on the calcification and also on the therapies that have been used to approach calcification. And I have to tell you that when I looked at the therapies and everything else, I realized that something was missing to make those therapies more effective. And it was only in 2015, after I'd been working on it for like 10 years, that I saw Dr. Vivahari's paper focusing on damaged elastin fiber, targeting damaged elastin fiber. And it turns out, lo and behold, that damaged elastin fiber is where this calcification starts. Because when the fiber is damaged, as it is in all of us, it sends out a help signal. Help, help, help. Come and get me, save me. And the inflammatory stuff comes in from all of these immune cells, starts to clean out the damaged elastin so that new elastin can be formed, except guess what? It isn't formed anymore after you're 29. So you get this nasty, vicious cycle of chronic inflammation. And then the body tries to solve it through this calcification process. That's when the light went on for me, when I realized that elastin fiber was at the core of this whole calcification process. And by the way, of the heart disease process, because it's the same thing. Before you ever get plaque, usually, not all the time, but most of the time, your arteries start to stiffen. The artery wall starts to stiffen. That's because the elastin fiber is degrading. So that really turned on a light for me. And that's why I've been talking so much about this elastic life in the body. So that really is such an incredible topic, because elastin fiber, it's in your eyes, it's in your ears. You can't talk or see or do anything without it. It's an absolutely fascinating substance. So curiosity, but also self-preservation, because I was and still am, a candidate for these chronic diseases. Now, having said that, we can go back and say once again, nutrition, whole food, plant-based, absolutely. Regular exercise. I do ocean swimming, for example, which in this climate that I'm in up here is really interesting, because you end up pushing ice flows out of the way in the winter. But, all those things are important. I don't want to say that there's a magic pill out there that you take, but the body can only do so much. It needs help. And that's what these therapies are all about. So our goal is basically to prevent and reverse cardiovascular disease, but also cancer. Because a lot of cancers, actually, they grow because of damaged elastin fiber. Because damaged elastin fiber particles, which are called elastin-derived peptides, EDPs, promote tumor progression. Imagine that. So the tumors actually feed on them and use them to replicate. Very smart things, these cancer tumors. They feed on the very stuff that is being degraded. So imagine if we can start repairing and restoring this stuff, the effects on these chronic illnesses, whether they're carcinogenic or cardiovascular, could be enormous. And I just wish that a whole lot more funding was going into this stuff. We're just at the beginning of it.
Yeah, we need funding, we need support, and we need to make noise about it. And all in all, I like the lifestyle change or lifestyle aspect that you bring into things, because there's really no magic pill. You have to support that treatment or whatever therapy it is. So being active, getting yourself healthy meals. But that brings a concern, because I have been involved in a lot of community-based education, about healthy eating, managing disease processes, and lifestyle change. It's easy for me, as somebody who can at this time afford food of my choosing, right, to talk about the importance of eating organic food.
But for people who are, if you don't mind my interrupting,
Absolutely,
who are living,
go right ahead.
for people who are living in food deserts,
Right.
as they call them,
Right.
where you can't get fresh food, unbelievably, still today in the United States, there are food deserts on top of all of these processed foods,
Yes.
highly processed foods that were being fed. And I just need to emphasize again that the new administration is really focusing on this for the first time. And, that can be nothing but good. Yes, the FDA has talked about it, but, not like the new administration is going to do. They're really going to go after promoting this healthy diet with whole foods instead of these highly processed foods. So I can't emphasize enough how important that is.
It's work that I need to see. Talk is cheap. Anybody can say anything and get people on their side. I really need to see that action, because a lot of the people that I come in contact with really do want to make a change. But how do you make a change when you can't afford it? Right? How do you make a change when you don't have access to be able to affect those changes, to live a healthier life, a disease-free life, and not for yourself, not only for yourself, but for your children.
But there's something I want to emphasize.
Right.
Colleagues of ours who ran the top Michelin-ranked restaurant in the world in Denmark, they went into a hospital and started feeding patients with proper whole food. Okay. Then one of the world's leading accounting companies followed them through this process and found that when they trained the staff to use whole foods to substitute for these processed foods that had been used by the hospitals, their costs went down by 35%.
I believe it.
So people who say, it can't be afforded, this is nonsense. What we need is to give people the opportunity to get their hands on this stuff. And by the way, when that happened, for the first time, patients started finishing their food.
Of course.
So this was a really remarkable finding, but it got huge blowback from the other hospitals who simply didn't believe it. They didn't believe the evidence. Fake news. Oh, well, one of the world's top accounting companies has actually gone alongside and documented this. No, it doesn't matter. It's all fake news, because they were so worried about their reputation of feeding all this junk food to their patients. That's called vested interest blowback. And once again, this is what the new administration is talking about overcoming.
Yeah, I think the vested interest blowback has been the detriment of most healthcare systems, because the focus most times is not on the effect of proper care, rather the pockets of the shareholders, right? So when things like this happen, where we are in an evidence-based world, right? Show me the results. Show me it works. Then I'll take it on. But in the situation where there was plenty of results to show that it worked.
Yeah, I mean, look at some of the best-selling books. Reverse and Prevent Heart Disease, bestseller for years and years. Caldwell Esselstyn, who I'm sure you've heard of, shows that you can reverse the effects of heart disease. This is like 20 years ago, and you're quite correct. This has been known, but it has, encountered stiff resistance. And now we're going to see what happens with that.
Let's see. I'm hopeful for my industry. I'm hopeful for the great hospital systems that are looking to make lasting change and impact. I'm hopeful for all the good medical practitioners, people in the medical industry, doctors, nurses, social workers, you name it. And it goes on and on. Holistic practitioners, integrative medicine. I'm looking to see all of us remember why we got into this in the first place.
Yeah.
A lot of us have. A lot of us are frustrated because we are not able to practice in the way that speaks to that heart. But I am hopeful to see changes that will help not only the healthcare industry and the people that are making lasting changes either in their practice or research, right? To really have the support that is needed so humanity can benefit from it. So it always excites me to have these conversations. And I learned a lot. Douglas, thank you for the education. And I'm very, very grateful you made time to be here. Your presence was a blessing. So the one thing that I like to end my shows with is to ask you to leave a few golden nuggets for our listeners.
Oh, okay.
A few. It doesn't have to be one. So,
Yeah, I always say every breath you take, every step you make is driven by the elastic fiber in your body. That's absolutely
literally
number one for people to learn about. And I hope that discovering the nature of longevity will help them along that road to discovery.
Beautiful. Thank you. So that is actually a literal nugget because all of this is elastin fiber, turning my head, that flexibility. So take care of yourself, take care of your body, the stressors you can control, but the other stresses that you can't. I think holistically eating foods that help pull those things out will help you mitigate a lot of those effects. Just do your best in taking care of your body. It's the only one you have. This is the only casing we have. And do your best in preserving it. So thank you, Douglas. I appreciate you being here again.
It was a delight. Thanks so much for having me, and I hope your foot gets better.
Thank you. Me too. So, bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to us. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks for tuning in to Unshelling Medicine Podcast. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Altruistic Scribe on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We share additional tips, updates, and health-related content that you won't want to miss. Have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes? Reach out to us at altruisticscribeco.com. We're always eager to hear from our listeners and tackle the health topics that matter most to you. Until next time, stay healthy and take care.